what's going on? It's the Max Name Coach, you guys, with a breaking video, I guess, technically. It is reported that Patrick Kane has signed with the Detroit Red Wings for 1 year to a $2.75 million contract, and that is honestly not bad. Obviously, I was one of the skeptics of having Kane come to the Red Wings. I either didn't think it was going to happen or didn't want it to happen, but wouldn't have been too upset if it did. You know, I was one of those guys who was a fence sitter on it. Straight up, I was a fence sitter on it. And there's a lot of reasons. A, because of his hip resurfacing surgery. We've seen what happened with Nicholas Backstrom. He came back for all of a month, and now he's gone. He's gone and probably done with his career. And also his performance and production has dropped. He is 35 years old, but he does still have his playmaking and passing style, I believe. Now, I didn't watch too much of him last year between Chicago and New York, so I'm interested to see what he'll bring. But I think Prashant Thayer here summed it up the best on Twitter. Prashant Thayer, if you guys don't know, host of the Expected by Whom podcast by the Wingfield Podcast Network, and just an incredible analytical guy, especially in the Detroit sphere. But he said, "My 2 cents on the Kane signing. To start, I'm wary of anyone from the 2010 Blackhawks team that should have spoken up about Kyle Beach plus the current John Doe and Brad Eldridge, particularly a leader from that team when it was stated by multiple players that everyone knew." Yeah, that's a concern. You know, a lot of people will go back to him, assaulting a cab driver for whatever fucking reason that was. But this is probably a bigger thing, even though personally I do believe he should have. That's really not too much up for debate. He should have spoken up, but we don't know the full context behind why he didn't. Whether, he didn't feel his job was safe, whether he was being threatened in some other way, we don't know. But I do agree he should have spoken up. He then goes on to say, from an on-ice perspective, his current play is a far cry from what he used to be, and the drop-off started 3 years ago, challenging the theory that it was all injury-related. That's true. When you get past your 30s, you're naturally, unless you're Sidney Crosby, just naturally, your performance is going to drop. You can't move like you used to in hockey. When you turn 35 in most sports, that's not called baseball. Once you get into your mid to late 30s, especially in hockey, you will definitely start to feel it. You're not going to be able to move nearly as fast as you once did, even if you weren't a particularly great skater. You won't be able to move nearly as fast as you once did. And, it's just one of those things. Age is a cruel business. Then he says, the aspect of Kane's game is still that still persists is his passing. He always has been an elite passer with elite vision, and that likely will be how he can contribute on ice. That is true. Like I said, Patrick Kane is an incredible passer and is one of the best, if not the best playmaker in the game, or at least was. And it's going to be interesting to see if he can keep that going. Thankfully, that play style translates very well into your 30s. We've seen it with Perron. And all he has to do, really, is not be an incredible defensive liability. What I think they're going to have to do if they play Kane on the top or the second line, they'll have to put Seider and Wallman behind him. Because if you put him on the top line, Larkin's not going to be able to cover all of that. Because if you put him on the top line without Seider and Wallman, then you're going to end up having you're probably going to end up having Schrott and Petrie back there, which basically makes Dylan Larkin the only defensive guy out there. And Larkin can't cover for everybody, so I believe they'll have to move the lineup a bit, because what they've been going with now is Schrott, Petrie covering with the first line, Seider, Wallman for the second and third lines, essentially, and then, it'll definitely be interesting to see how they deploy him. They're obviously signing him so that way they can get Debrincat and Larkin going. But even if they don't do that all the time, Patrick Kane can really only help with his playmaking if his playmaking is good. to anybody else. I mean, think about it. You put him on a line with Veleno and Sprong, and that line is all of a sudden going to kill it. Like, because I don't think you need Kane to make Debrincat a 40-goal scorer. We've seen that already. You don't need Patrick Kane to get Debrincat to score like he does, because he has been. He's already at 12. He's at 12 goals in the season, so he's already on pace to hit at least 40. So I'm going to be interested to see where they put him, to say the least. He goes on to say that all that aside, we're now talking about a 35-year-old player coming off of hip resurfacing surgery, a surgery that's uncommon to return from for athletes, and one that has mixed results in the past couple of years. Andy Murray from tennis, Nick Backstrom, we've covered that. Altogether, on a one-year deal, it is a deal with little risk, although the potential benefit is entirely dependent on how well you think Kane can fight Father Time and bounce back from a surgery that just sidelined another NHL player. Ultimately, I'm extremely skeptical about this deal, that this deal pans out, but at minimum, it's a low-risk deal that amounts to a show-me contract. The part that I did not state is the effects that it has on players in the locker room and fans. Kane's arguably the greatest male American, and adding a player that with that label may provide an emotional boost. Yeah, that is a bit of an unspoken rule. Not rule, but an unspoken thing, because moods change when you get elite talent. You've seen what Debrincat did for the Red Wings when he showed up. They thrive around him. And because it's not just a leadership perspective, it is just that presence of an elite talent. Like I said, see Debrincat when he showed up. Last year, the Detroit Red Wings couldn't be fucking bothered to try when they were down or have that jump in their step consistently, which you can argue they do or don't now. When Debrincat showed up, it was very obvious the mood of this team shifted. They were going for it. Like, they are going for it. That just seems to be the thing. So, adding an elite guy like Patrick Kane can only help elevate that. Because, believe it or not, players don't care too much about what happens on or off ice unless it's incredibly egregious, which, let me be clear, I do believe covering up for sexual assault is incredibly egregious. At the same time, players know more than we do. And odds of them looking at Patrick Kane and saying, I hate you because you didn't speak up, isn't very likely. And even if they don't like Patrick Kane, even if they just can't stand him, they hate him, they're professionals. They're going to put all of that aside when they're on the ice, doing their jobs, and they're going to play the game. That's the thing. You don't have to be best friend. Sider said this. You don't have to be friends with everybody to play the game. And a lot of people were criticizing Sider for that because they were saying, oh, what, does he have beef with somebody in the team? I don't think Mo Sider can have beef with anybody that's on his team. I don't think Mo Sider is capable of holding a grudge. It's true. You don't have to like somebody on your team to play the game. Just like any other job, just like any other career, any other professional in any other profession, you leave whatever gripe you have with somebody at the door. And you go in, do your job, and then when you're done with your job, you can be pissed off all you want at home. That's how it goes. Will that inevitably bring the mood down a bit? Yeah, it will. But if Patrick Kane comes in, does what you want him to do, elevates the team offensively, and gets the team more momentum going, then ultimately you will deal with it. If you don't like Patrick Kane, but he is unarguably helping the team, you won't let that bring the rest of the team's mood down. So I wanted to go over Patrick Kane's stats because obviously he's 35 years old. He's going to be one of the top 3 oldest guys in the team behind Reimer, and he's going to be tied with Reimer for age. I don't know when exactly he was born. We can check that right now. November 19th, I think Reimer was born earlier. So Reimer is still technically the oldest Red Wing right now. But he's the second oldest, right behind Reimer and right before Perron. Perron's 34. So, which is amazing. I thought Perron was 36, if you ask, honestly. But, yeah, if you look at his stats, obviously, elite level stats, and even in the last few years, His production may have gone down a bit in 22-23, but he was still only 10 points behind a point per game. In 21-22, he had 92 points. So he was at 150 points in the last two seasons, over a point per game in 2020-2021, 2019-2020, over a point per game. He's consistently at or over a point per game, even in his older years. So it's going to be interesting to see if that can carry over. Because, I mean, even in the Rangers last year, he had 12 points in 19 games with the Rangers, 6 points in 7 playoff games. I think that the hip resurfacing will hamper him a bit, but if all he's coming in to do is be a playmaker and pass the puck beautifully like we know he can, then I don't think his age and hip resurfacing will matter an incredible amount. The only thing I think that will contribute to, or not the only thing, but the main thing I think that'll contribute to is his already pretty poor defense. I'm interested to see where it goes. Obviously, this contract, like Prashanth said, is a very low risk deal, and it's at the end amounts to just a show me contract, And if he can't play, throw him on LTIR. You get that cap space back because it's only a 1-year deal. That's my 2 cents in it. Obviously, like I said, and I cannot reiterate this enough, I do not agree with him not speaking up about everything that happened in Chicago. I think he should have, but at the same time, we need to look at any context possible, and that context is we don't know what the context is. We don't know if he was threatened with his job. We don't know if he was threatened with any form of legal action for anything. We don't know. We don't know why he didn't speak up, and we likely never will, so there's no point in skepticizing on it. But Prashanth sums it up perfectly. So I'll link to the tweet, and I want to know what you guys think, because this is going to be a very divisive topic that a lot of people want to talk about. So thank you guys so much for watching. My name is, as always, the Mexican Canadian, and I will talk to you guys later. Adios.